Greetings, Uncle Travelling Matt here, and we're back in Tashkent after our week's travel all through the western part of Tajikistan. So what have we done today? It's been quite a nice, chilled out day, although we've actually packed a bit in. So I actually woke up really early this morning. I am getting better with the cold. Doesn't sound like it. I sound worse than I've ever sounded, but I am. I am actually getting much better. So I'm feeling a lot better than I did before. So woke up really early, did a bit of reading and stuff like that. And then we went to the border. It wasn't very far away at all. I mean, the initial guide said it was like 70 kilometres away. It wasn't. It's more like 10. And it was a really easy crossover. There were very few people there. The main point of interest being that we bought that massive picture of Imam Ali Rahman, and Thomas was carrying it through, and everyone just thought it was hilarious that he was carrying a picture of the local dictator through customs, more from the Uzbek side, but the Tajiks thought it was funny too. And I guess, that's one thing about dictatorships. There are lots of dictatorships in the world, and some take it more seriously than others. And I don't think the Tajiks take that stuff that seriously. That's not saying it isn't a real dictatorship and all that. Anyway, on the other side, got in a Mashurka shared taxi. It's actually a little van. And we made our way into Samarkand. Now, I've been to Samarkand 22 years ago on my big Central Asian trip then with Tom Van Noten. And it was a city I barely recognised. It's changed so much. There's been so much investment in it, so much building. The roads are much bigger and better, although the traffic is much worse, and so it takes a lot longer to get around anywhere. We got the guy to drop us off at the railway station and immediately bought a ticket for that afternoon on the fast train to Tashkent. And that gave us a few hours. So what we did is we hired a car for those hours to take us to see some of the sights. First we had some lunch, because we hadn't had anything since breakfast. But then we went to two of Samarkand's most serious sites, both of which I'd been to before, but I'd seen a lot before anyway. The first is one of the lesser-known sites, and it's the tomb of the prophet Daniel. Now, readers of the Bible might know him. Daniel in the lion's den, and he was thrown into the lion's den, but the lions wouldn't eat him. And it's because he'd befriended one years earlier, and the lion recognised him and so protected him. And my knowledge of the Bible, that part of the Bible, is not brilliant, but I seem to think it's when the Jews were in exile in Babylon. So not a million miles away, I suppose, from Central Asia, although that's not why his body was there. But it's one of those stories that was really, our primary school teachers really liked that kind of story. It's all about friendship and being good and how favours will be returned, which is the stuff of primary school assemblies, I suppose. And apparently one of the great leaders of Samarkand had his body brought back from Mecca. Now, quite what his body was doing in Mecca, I really don't know. I know the Muslims revere him, but how they got him in Mecca when I don't know where. Maybe he was originally buried in Baghdad or somewhere, and they moved into Mecca. I don't know. Anyway, body was brought back from Mecca, and it was brought to Samarkand and placed on the edge of what was once the citadel. And it's a very unusual. It's quite a nice shrine. But it's a very unusual one because when you go there, the grave is extremely long. And it's probably about 20 metres or so. And that is because the body is said to miraculously grow. And so they made the tomb long so the body could grow within it. Although it's probably stopped growing now because the tomb hasn't been lengthened since I've been last visited. It's about the only thing that hasn't changed. I mean, all the area around it's been done up. And when I was last there, it wasn't signposted properly. You just climbed up some steps. You certainly didn't pay to go in there, and you could go into the tomb building and wander around. Whereas this time the there was a barrier across the thing, but they built a complex around it for people to pray in, and that it's actually quite tastefully done, but much more commercialised, and you have to pay. So anyway, we went to that, and then afterwards we went to the Registan. Registan means marketplace, and there's Registans all over Central Asia. We went to a very fine one in Khujand, but the Registan is the one in Samarkand because it is one of, if not the finest city square in the world. I mean, I think architecturally it's up there with the Taj Mahal. I think it is one of the 7 architectural wonders of the world, and the only reason it never got on the list because it was in the Soviet Union, and they certainly weren't going to give them that. It's basically 3 madrasas facing onto a square, and they are enormous, but the proportions, the tile work, and the colours are out of this world, particularly this incredible turquoise of the dome of the mosque. Absolutely wonderful. Another thing that's remarkable about them is if you were looking at the Registan, the one that is on your right has, I think they're tigers or lions on it, and that is, of course, not accepted by all Muslims because it depicts a human life form. Although, to be fair, I've been to mosques in Albania where animals have been painted on, so it's not the only one that does it. But yes, it's that's that. So we went there, and we had a coffee, sat down, took some photos, and just chilled out a bit. Got talking to a young Tajik man, a young Uzbek man, who was another one who was hoping to do the fruit picking in England. It seems to be a big thing across Central Asia. And we also got accosted by a guy who was taking official photos, and he conned us into parting with a bit of our money. So we did a little impromptu photo shoot, which was, it was a bit of fun, really. And that was that. And then we went back to Samarkand station, one of those amazing brutalist Soviet-era stations, a bit like Sofia. It's not quite on the level of Sofia, but it's not far off. Still a great station. And then we caught the Afro-Siob Talgo train, and these trains are actually the same trains I've been on in Spain, the high-speed trains in Spain. They're not on a designated high-speed line, they're on the normal lines, but of course they go a lot faster than the normal trains. And we were in business class because they sold out of the others, but it wasn't too expensive. And so we had a 2-hour journey from Samarkand to Tashkent, and it was all rather fun. And sat out of the window and watched the world go by. And the scenery wasn't the most spectacular. It's certainly after Tashkent with all those, after Tajikistan with all those mountains, but it was very flat. It's very lush. It's obviously quite good agricultural ground here. Not as much cotton as I expected, which suggests they're moving away from the monoculture. And also, several freight trains coming past. It was quite fun. So that was that. At Tashkent station, we were met by Aziz, who we went for a meal with. And what we did is we went to a meal. There are these Uzbek Koreans. So these Koreans fled from kind of Japanese imperialism into what was the Russian Empire or the Soviet Union later on. Like in that area, sort of near North Korea and above Manchuria, when the Japanese pushed into Manchuria as well, and they lived there. But then Stalin was a bit distrustful of them, as he often was, of nationalities, and so he moved them all to Uzbekistan, and they're still there as a separate group. I don't know if they intermarry much. They're very Russified. I met quite a few of them on my first trip, and they all had names like Sasha and Tanya and stuff like that. They spoke Russian, which seems to still be the case. But very interestingly, about 10 years ago, I watched a film called The Wedding Campaign, which is a Korean comedy, all about like South Korean farmer boys who go to Uzbekistan to find a bride because there's a shortage of women where they live in South Korea. And they try and get these, these girls from these Uzbek Koreans. Not very successful, but they fall in love with the girl who's the guide for the tour group. And of course, it turns out that she is actually a North Korean. and I think one of them marries her in the end, and it's all very good. But yeah, it's a bit of harmless fun. But anyway, they're this separate group, and they have their own cuisine, which is kind of a mashup of Korean and Uzbek. So, for example, we had, I don't know what you call it in Korean, but what's called bambao in the steam buns with the meat inside. But it was beef, not pork, which it normally is, because obviously the Muslim country did struggle to get hold of the pork. And there was a noodle soup, and it was mostly like a Korean noodle soup, but there was like bits of cucumber in there, which you wouldn't get in a Korean one. There's also a cold noodle soup, and you don't often get that, but you do I've had it in Korea and Japan as well. And then we have this thing where you take like leaves and you put bits in them and roll it up and make sort of impromptu spring rolls, which is something they do in Vietnam. But the actual leaves they use are like lettuce leaves. They're not the leaves they would use in Vietnam, and it's just a little bit different in every way. There are these nods to where they are, but it's still Korean at heart. And it was a wonderful meal anyway. Fantastic. Really enjoyed it. And it was, of course, great talking to Aziz again. And we're going to see more of him tomorrow with his son, and I hope his dad as well. So there we are. So from me, Uncle Travelling Matt, keep travelling.